You are listening to Book Clips, a mini podcast in which authors or narrators do readings from novels. Check out the show notes for the synopsis and buy links for this book.
Hi, this is Genevieve Fortin, and I will read a part of First Fall, my first novel. This is the part where Audrey meets Marielle for the first time. Audrey moved from Manhattan to live in St. George, a quiet town in Canada, and she has new neighbors, Marielle, her husband, and her son. And right now her son is playing with Audrey's dog in Audrey's yard. So this is where the scene starts. Audrey was both frightened and fascinated by the scene being played out right in front of her in her own yard. Frightened because Ralph had never been around children before, so she was watching for any sign of aggression on his part, not even sure what those signs might be, as he'd never been aggressive with anyone to this day. She also knew deep down her tiny dog couldn't cause much damage, but her head was full of horrible stories about young children being unexpectedly bitten by dogs. These accidents always resulted in the disfiguration of the child and the dog owner being forced by law to have their crazed animal euthanized. She was ready to stop it from happening at any cost. She was fascinated, on the other hand, because the same dog who could barely get the concept of fetching a ball and bringing it back to her was now participating in a chasing game with a child he didn't know, understanding when it was his turn to chase or be chased, as if he'd been playing this game forever. Distracted by something entering her peripheral vision, she turned to come face to face with a woman walking in her direction, the same woman she'd been observing earlier. A blush instantly spread across her face as she finally took in the whole picture. Natural red highlights gave depth and richness to her dark hair. Subtle freckles on her cheeks gave her a healthy glow. Her eyes were dark, almost black, with the same never-ending eyelashes her son had inherited from her. Audrey had to force her gaze to stay at eye level when she noticed the red hooded sweatshirt was unzipped, just enough to reveal part of the cleavage between full, perfectly round breasts where more freckles were showcased. It had been so long since a woman had this kind of effect on Audrey that she barely recognized the tingling in her stomach. She returned the woman's smile and forgot all about the dog and the child playing in her yard. "Bonjour," the woman started. "Elle parle pas français," Felix offered before his mother could finish her greeting. He ran to them and continued with pride, looking at Audrey. "I told her you don't speak French." "Did you? Thanks, buddy." She ruffled the boy's hair awkwardly, hoping she looked more at ease than she felt, before bringing her attention back to his mother. "I'm afraid he's right. Do you speak English?" "Oh, yes, of course, but please forgive my accent." Audrey smiled, thinking there was nothing to forgive at all. The accent was adorable, and if this woman got any sexier, she would be in deep trouble. "Get a hold of yourself, you idiot," she chided herself. "Oh, good. I wasn't sure because your son said his dad is the one who taught him." "Yes, well, Sam, that's my husband. He spent his childhood in Connecticut, so his English is much better than mine. He speaks to Felix in English, and I speak to him in French. It was very important to us that he learns both languages." Audrey couldn't keep the stupid grin off her face. She could listen to the woman talk all day. Connecticut had never sounded as exotic as when she said it, pronouncing each syllable and each letter. Connecticut. "I see. That makes sense. And what language do you speak to each other?" "That's a good question." "Sorry. French. We speak French to each other." "My name is Marielle Demers, by the way." Audrey let the way the French name rolled off Marielle's tongue make its way through her entire body as she shook her hand. "Audrey Eriksson, nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too, and I think you've already met my son Felix. I hope he's not bothering you too much." "Oh no, not at all," she lied. "Felix and my dog were just getting acquainted." "His name is Wolf, Mom. He's so cool." And just like that, the boy ran away from the adults, and the dog followed. Audrey watched them go back to their chasing game, and when she turned to Marielle again, she caught her amused yet inquisitive look. "Wolf? Well, it's Ralph, but seeing how he seems to do everything your son wants, I think I may start calling him Wolf myself." They laughed together, and it felt strangely comfortable. As their laughter subsided, she saw another question take shape in Marielle's mind before she even opened her mouth. "Eriksson, is that Swedish?" Originally, yes, but I'm American. My family's been in the States for so many generations, I couldn't even tell you what part of Sweden we came from. I'm from Brunswick, actually, on the coast of Maine. Oh yeah, that's close to Freeport, right? We go shopping down there once or twice a year. Great outlets. They both smiled. Audrey let her gaze wander to the full lips and the white teeth, perfection that the slight overlap between the top incisors only made more perfect. Marielle indicated the log cabin with a movement of her chin. Nice chalet. Audrey uselessly turned to look at her own house, as if she didn't know what Marielle was referring to. On the same salary that forced her to live with 2 roommates in Manhattan, she only needed 3 years in St. George to come up with a down payment on her cabin. She'd fallen in love with the square logs, the steep roof, the stonework on the facade, and most of all, the large windows looking out on the park. Thank you. It's small but cozy, and it's plenty big enough for me and Wolf. Marielle laughed again, and Audrey took foolish pride in making the woman laugh. Marielle didn't look as though she wanted to go, or was that just wishful thinking? But nevertheless she pointed her thumb over her shoulder at the bungalow and announced, "Okay, well, I better go back to those boxes. There are so many. It was really very nice to meet you, Audrey." "Same here. Welcome to the neighborhood." They shook hands again, and Audrey realized she held on to the warmth longer than necessary. Marielle smiled and turned to her son, who was still running around with Ralph. "Come on, Felix, let's go." "But, Mom—" "I said let's go." The boy patted his new best friend's head and started running after his mother, followed by the small white dog. "Ralph, you stay here!" Audrey shook her head at her own complete lack of authority when the dog kept running away, and reached inside her pocket. She held the dog biscuit in front of her and yelled again, "You want a treat?" The dog immediately turned around and ran to her. She let him have the biscuit and picked him up before he had a chance to escape again. She watched Marielle and Felix make their way to their front door, shamelessly admiring the way Marielle's bottom swayed left and right, and waved back when the woman stopped to look at her and wave with a smile before disappearing inside the house. Audrey put the dog back on the ground and let him walk behind her through their own front door. Once inside, she muttered to herself, "Audrey Eriksson, you are a pathetic idiot. Get your hormones under control and your eyes back into their sockets, will you?" She grunted with frustration and looked down at the dog staring back at her. "What are you looking at, you silly mutt, huh?" He yawned and left her to go curl up on a large square pillow by the fireplace. Apparently, playing with a 6-year-old was an exhausting enterprise. You've been listening to Genevieve Fortin, reading from my first novel, First Fall. Thank you very much.
You have been listening to Book Clips. Check out the show notes for the synopsis and buy links for this book. If you are interested in showcasing your novel, then check out the show notes for more information.